All right, Assalamualaikum and good morning to all. Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin our program. Just a gentle reminder to avoid interruptions. Please keep your microphone muted. And if you have any question for today's guest, kindly drop your questions at the chat box or during our question and answer session towards the end of the program. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Greetings to Dr. Rizalawati Ismail, Deputy Director of Business Development and Marketing at IIUM Academy. Technologist Dr. Muhammad Zahid Ismail, our honorable guest speaker, ladies and gentlemen, our respected audience, brothers and sisters. Welcome to Baseerah Talk Series, a program organized by IIUM Academy of Graduate and Professional Studies. My name is Naima from IIUM Academy Events. It's a pleasure to meet all of you for the 8th session of Baseerah Talk Series. As for newcomers, welcome to our program. We conducted this talk monthly since last March, where we invite prominent speakers among the professionals and experts who will deliver topics related to their fields. Today, we have participants in the Zoom meeting and also those streaming live on our YouTube channel. We are happy to welcome all joiners to our talk series today. In the previous series, we had invited Mr. Wan Abdul Rahim from PNB Berhad, Datuk Nik Muhammad Hasyuddin from Bank Islam, Dr. Zaharuddin, founder of Elza Group. We also had Professor Datuk Dr. Muhammad Rizal Wahidin from Academy of Sciences Malaysia, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Anwar Ali, Chancellor University of Cyberjaya, Mr. Ahmad Alfi Shahrin, the Shariah Director of Al Rajhi Bank, and last session was with Mr. Amir Ali, former CEO of PNB Investment Berhad. If you would like to watch all the previous sessions, you may do so by following our IIUM Academy YouTube channel and find all sessions of Baseerah Talk Series, which we have uploaded. For our talk today, we are very delighted to present you technologist Dr. Muhammad Zahid Ismail, Executive Director of UDS Group, who will discuss the title Islam and Environmental Sustainability. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Zahid. And to introduce our speaker, I have the pleasure to invite IIUM Academy Deputy Director of Business Development and Marketing, Dr. Rizalawati Ismail. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Emma. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. I am so happy and honored to have with us today technology doctors Dr. Muhammad Zahid Ismail. Thank you very much for joining us for these sessions, become a speakers for our Baseerah Talk today. And Technology Doctors Muhammad Zahid Ismail will be talking about a very prominent topic, very interesting topic, about Islam and environmental sustainability. Before I introduce further, just a very short introductions about Dr. Muhammad Zahid Ismail. Dr. Muhammad Zahid Ismail obtained his PhD in engineering management from ITM Shah Alam in 2013, and he was also our former faculty members, from Kuliah of KICT, Chief Executive Officer, IIUM Advanced Technologies Sdn Berhad. I will not introduce further, about technology doctors Muhammad Zahid Ismail, because I'm sure that, there's a lot of things that Doctor will say, about himself after this. I let the honor of Dr. Zahid himself, introduce his background and further with our topic today. Over to you, Doctor. Thank you very much. Doctor, the microphone.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning to all of you. My name is DS Dr. Muhammad Zahid Ismail. And for me, this is basically like a homecoming of sorts, because coming from IIUM previously, I feel that it is my filial obligation to share my knowledge with IIUM, especially on the area of research and also practice that I've been adopting for the last 10-15 years, which is in the area of engineering management and also in the area of sustainability. Today, I would like to give you a bit of background of myself. Basically, I am having a business, my own business in engineering services. We are doing a lot of work in telecommunications, energy management, and also in human capital development. And previously, I was the CEO of IIUM Technologies. We are doing basically the same initiative that we have been doing for the last 10 years in the area of energy management. And for today's topic, I would like to share with you the area of sustainability from the perspective of Islam and how we can actually adopt it into the practical lives of us as individual and of course as a community, as an ummah itself. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to just proceed with my presentation. Okay. So basically, the topic for today's Baseerah talk is Islam and environmental sustainability. So when we look at the areas that I will be covering, we will be covering 5 main sections. The first is actually Islam and environmental sustainability. I will be covering also on the environmental problems affecting sustainability, applying the best practices, case studies, and sustainability measures in IIUM. So these are the areas that we feel that I can share, and maybe we can discuss further and perhaps learn from past experience of how we can actually move forward and improve the sustainability standards of our well-being. Now, when we look at the first topic, Islam and environmental sustainability, when you look at the Islamic beliefs, tradition, and values, okay, it provides an effective and comprehensive solution to the current environmental challenges faced by human race. Okay, Islam highlights the importance of environmental protection and conservation of natural resources. And according to Islamic law, the basic elements of nature, land, water, fire, forest, and light, belongs to all living things and not just human beings. So that's basically the first foundation of the sustainability in the eyes of the Quran and Islam. And the Holy Quran has reference to ecology and contains important principles of environmental conservation. Okay, one concept of Khalifa, which is this trusteeship. Okay, man must ensure that entrusted property to be passed to the next generation by respecting, nurture, and care of the environment. So this is actually being a Khalifa on this earth. This actually is our amanah to the environment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also detests all sorts of corruption, not just political corruption, but also environmental corruption, like industrial pollution, environmental damages, and of course, reckless exploitation of resources. And in the Quran, there are several surahs that has mentioned about the environment. One of those is in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verses 64, and Allah loveth not those who do mischief. In Surah Al-A'raf, verse 85, and do not do mischief on earth after it has been set in order. That will be best for you if you have faith. And the third one is actually in Surah Al-Qasas, do not and do good. Okay, and Allah, and these are basically some of the words, and Allah does not love the corruptors. So when you look at the Holy Quran and environment, according to the scriptures of the Quran, environmental conservation is actually a religious duty, as well as a social obligation, and it is not an optional matter. The exploitation of a particular natural resource is directly related to accountability and maintenance of the resource. So there you go, a very, very strong, worded comment, or basically a tenet of how we should be able to observe the environment based on the Quran itself. Rasulullah SAW, okay, this is actually basically something that he has been adopted way back 1400 years ago. In order to protect the land, the forest, and wildlife, Rasulullah SAW have created inviolable zones known as Haram and Hima, in which resources was to be left untouched. Haram was actually areas to be drawn up around the wells and water sources to protect the groundwater from being overpumped. That means manage the resources in a way that it will not be exploited unnecessarily. And Hima is basically applied to zoning of wildlife and forestry so that the grazing and wood cutting will not be exploited to an area that it's not permitted. So Rasulullah SAW, the Prophet himself, established a Hima to the south of Medina and forbade hunting within 4 miles radius and destruction of trees or plants within we'll call this a 12-mile radius. So you're talking about sustainability even during the time of the Prophet. He is actually the one who set example, not just from his character, but from his practice. That's basically where we come in and how we should be able to adopt and practice environmental sustainability, because it is being set by the man himself. And because of that, the creation of invaluable zones shows the importance placed by the Prophet Muhammad SAW on sustainable use of natural resources, and he forbade destruction of trees and crops during war times, and he gave a high degree of importance towards sustainable cultivation of land, waste minimization, and humane treatment of animals, and the preservation of natural resources and protection of wildlife. So in fact, in the hadith itself, many hadith has also summarized a lot of aspects on resource conservation, land reclamation, and environmental hygiene. So therefore, the Prophet ﷺ has actually set the path, and he discouraged overconsumption, luxury lavishness, and encouraged moderation and also sustainability in all walks of life, even during his time. Now, moving forward, we are living in an environment far removed from the life of the Prophet and the people of the Sahaba. Now we are facing a very different world. We are facing environmental problems. We are facing a lot of challenges, okay, facing in terms of environmental sustainability, which is being compromised at this point in time. Now, when we look at scholarly articles that cites about factors affecting sustainability, there are 6 main areas that is contributing to the sustainability or lack of it thereof. Number 1 is actually climate change. And this is actually inevitable because of the greenhouse effect due to the Industrial Revolution since in the 1700s, with the advent of industrialization. The carbon emission has increased drastically from 1700s up to current day, to a very high level of CO2 emission. And you look at the climate change, you look at the wildfires, the heat waves, the flash floods that we are facing right now, a lot of uncertainty in the climate change that affects sustainability in this world. Environment. Sometimes we look at consumption of natural resources, overuse of wood to actually print out, to manufacture papers or food, or human consumption. People, for instance, we are actually driven by profit. And in the capitalist environment right now, everything is based on dollars and cents. People keep generating what we call this unnecessary material profit. For instance, like Zara. Zara always keep on developing a fashion for the last, every quarter. But when you look at the downside of it, there's a lot of unused products, wastages and whatnot. Ethics, okay, lack of thereof. Sometimes when you do not have ethics in terms of respecting the planet, in terms of farming, you will see people burning the forest just to actually allow them to do cultivation of plantation, which actually result in haze. So there's a lot of things. Innovation and technology, while it is good, but it also contributes to the pollution of this green earth. So there you go. And when you look at the carbon emission, which is actually one of the most glaring indicator of whether sustainability is being compromised or not, you can see how it has changed drastically for the last 400, 500 years. Of course, since the Prophet ﷺ, during that time, there is no data that we collected. But even in the 1700s, when you're talking about the Industrial Revolution, there is basically, they will capture an average, what we call annual atmospheric emission. They call it parts per million. That's basically the data or the unit measurement of or call this atmospheric of CO2 emission. If you look at the figures that's being bandied around from 279 in 1700, now in 2012, that was like 10 years ago, it goes up to 394, which is actually quite alarming because of the development that's happening around the world. And it is being forecasted that in 2050, it will go up to 685 parts per million. Now, you would wonder, what is the significance of this number? Now, according to scholarly articles and also researchers, if the parts goes up to 1,000 parts per minute, it will be very hazardous to the humankind. But by the time it reaches 1,000 parts per million, human will have difficulty in breathing. Number two, they have basically problem is respiration. Number three, they will get sleepy. And number four, it will affect their mortality. So this actually is something that's going to happen very soon if we do not take care of our environment. And it's not, even if it's not our time, in our children's or grandchildren's times, we pity them. We do not want this to happen to them. If we love them, we have to actually take care of this now, and we have to do it fast. So these are basically some of the things that we have to understand, because it is not being put into a serious consideration. We only talk about it as a passing remark. So when you look at the carbon emission by countries, of course, the number one contributor is China, followed by the America. But unfortunately, and sadly to say, Muslim countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, and even Turkey also, and in Indonesia also round up the top 15 of the world's carbon emission. Sometimes because of development, sometimes because of overpopulation, sometimes because of negligence of no best practices being applied in these countries. Now, when you look at the 20 countries with the highest emission per capita, also another sad news, because we see a lot of Muslim countries are culpable of all this contributing on the emission per capita, like Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE. So what does that tell you? Meaning that what it shows you is basically there's no sustainability practice or being put into consideration. So these are the things that we have to factor in and look at ourselves, how we can actually improve ourselves as humans and Muslims in order for us to maintain sustainability in our lifestyle. Now, having said that, and understanding the problems and actually knowing but what the Prophet Muhammad SAW has been preaching and practiced for the last 500 years, now let us move forward and how we feel that we can apply sustainability best practices today. What makes an environment Islamically sustainable? This is a question that we ask ourselves. Now, the Prophet ﷺ gave a high degree of importance towards sustainable cultivation of land, waste minimization, and discourage overconsumption of luxury and lavishness. These are basically what he has given us, okay, his amanah. He wants us to become a people or community of call this efficient community. So that means we have to look at sustainability in many areas. Number one is we look at shift to renewable resources. That means we try to minimize the overconsumption of non-renewable resources. We have to also protect the health of the ecosystem itself. We have to avoid excess pollution. We look at intergenerational decision. That means as a community, we have to look what is the best way for us to move forward and plan accordingly our lifestyle and our community, our cities, our villages, and target welfare, not just GAV. That means we are not just looking at profitability, dollars and cents, but also the welfare of the people and also the livestock and the plants that make up this green earth. So when you look at sustainability today, these are the key areas that we need to look at. Okay, we're talking about optimizing the current use of fossil fuels like coal, like a lot of other existing fuels that's been used to generate energy and also to generate resources. Eliminate wastage, recycle, recover or renew energy, productivity, saving time, saving money, and of course, eliminate pollution whenever necessary. So these are basically some of the practice that we have heard time and time again with seminars, in conferences, in what we call this road shows. But how do we actually reflect this in our life? Now, having said that, I want to move on to a very significant contributor to renewable energy. Now, renewable energy is very important because it is one of the element of agent of change in the sense that it can contribute to maintaining or restoring sustainability in this environment. So by looking at renewable energy only constitutes 30% of the overall energy, because most of the energy are basically consist of oil, charcoal gas, coal. These are basically the traditional energy generator, source of energy. But now we're talking about wind, hydropower, solar, biogas, biomass, and also hydro. Okay, so these are basically the areas that we feel that if we put emphasis, this can also be contributing to the sustainability objective in our lives. Now, going into one of the areas that we are considering or we are looking at is the area of biomass. Biomass, why I put emphasis on biomass is because it is basically end-to-end. You are basically using the existing resources, you optimize it, generate energy, and therefore you are basically saving end-to-end. You're talking about the resources, it covers all the boxes. It eliminates waste, it optimizes the usage of fuel, recovers energy, it recycles the existing resources, and it eliminates pollution. So when we talk about biomass, we're talking about sources from garden waste, municipal waste, live feeds. So these are basically what used to become garbage. We can reuse back and actually generate energy and not leave anything to waste. So when you look at biomass, for instance, okay, this one is basically data that I have collected from Alam Flora, because Alam Flora is one of the major renewable companies in Malaysia. Biomass fuel, for instance, it produces, in order for you to produce a 1.5 metric ton of steam. Steam is actually the steam to generate a turbine, which then in turn will actually go and generate energy, electricity. It requires basically around 1.5 tons per hour of wood chip supply. That means all the wood chip supply of 1.5 tons, or we call this 3.5 tons per day. And Alam Flora currently handles around 100 tons per day of garden waste, with the potential of handling 600 tons per day. So these are basically the existing what we call this resource that is available. If not used, it becomes basically what we call this garbage. We put it, will be not being used, not fully utilized. So what we do is we will use them as an input to the generator, generate energy, generate steam, which will then be converted into power, and we will then we can export it back to TNB, to the power grid, or we can use it internally to the university to generate power to the campus. So this actually is a very interesting proposition, and because this is actually a very, very common practice in Europe, in other parts of the Western countries, where biomass becomes a very, very important byproduct of energy and be able to save the environment by having a very optimal way of actually creating a very efficient cycle from the waste down to the energy emission. And going to the other part of energy management, one of the things that we mentioned just now is about carbon emission. Okay, this is actually the most trending, what we call this trending issue nowadays, is actually the use of EV. Now, EV is, everyone is talking about EV nowadays, talking about electric vehicles, commercial vehicles, what we call this, people conducting seminars. For the last 2-3 months, I can see countries in Thailand, in Malaysia, in Indonesia having all sorts of promotion on EV. You're talking about, BYD Auto, all this kind of incoming cars, charging stations, what we call this TNB, doing initiatives, Petronas, Gentari, doing all these kind of charging stations, which is good, which is actually a very, very good effort. But if you look at basically the contribution of what we call this EV, it is only 2.2% of the global vehicle market share. It's not a lot. Still a long way to go in terms of reducing carbon emission. Now, if you go back to the point just now, we're talking about 685 parts per million in 2050 in the future. If we want to actually move the needle a bit with introduction of with this current global market share, it will not contribute much to the overall, what we call this improvement on the greenhouse effect or the carbon emission. Therefore, we need to have more support. So now, actually, it is still at the infancy stage because, number one, there's a lot of what we call this not getting traction because of a lot of barriers of entry, like the cost is still very expensive. Even though government support, but it's not enough because you're talking about funding is actually a major issue. It's not something that's easily available. Charging infrastructure is not yet there. And of course, there are a lot more EVs. Okay, when we talk about EVs, one only thinks about this conventional sedan cars. We are talking about potential. Why don't you look at EV motors? Okay, motorcycles, two-wheel vehicles, vans. Talking about buses. Okay, there's a lot more to just a conventional car, or not just Tesla. Because when you look at, for instance, like in Malaysia itself, like buses, there's only 2 universities in Malaysia that uses EV bus, which is actually University Malaya and also UMP Pahang. That's the only 2 universities in Malaysia that uses. The rest are not. So that means when you look at the shuttle buses that goes to the universities, it still create a lot of CO2 emission within the campus. So how do you want to achieve sustainability within the campus if you do not have EV vehicles as part of your plan? So these are some of the things that we can consider in the future as part of our initiative as a community. And the challenges that we face so far, I think I mentioned just now, is number one is it's still very expensive. There's no such thing as a cheap EV. The cheapest one, I think BYD Auto, that's coming to Malaysia soon, costs you 150,000 ringgit. That's the cheapest, I think, in the market so far. That is, we call it BET, battery operated vehicle, not HEV, because there are 3 types. They're basically, we call this EV, BEV, battery is 100% EV. The one that you see most of the time is HEV, hybrid EV. That one you have like, you can use it for maybe 12, 20, 30 kilometers, and then you have fuel. And the other one is basically based on HEV, meaning that, they charge the power if you break. So that's basically another category of EV. So EVs also, there are many types. And of course, charging station is still a lot. Now you can see a lot of initiative to set up charging stations, but there's a lot way to go, and the coverage is still only focused on big cities, and then the alignment around the highway is still yet to be desired. So we're still in work in progress, I would say. And that's basically on mobile asset. When you look at the fixed asset, like in buildings, for instance, now we talk about cars. What about buildings? The place that we stay, our house, our building, our campus. What makes or what constitutes an environment that is basically fully compliant in terms of sustainability? Okay, sometimes when you design a building or a house, you might not be the most efficient in terms of what we call this providing the best what we call this output. Okay, for instance, if you build all glass building in the tropical country and you have air conditioning, you are basically actually not doing the best design, because you're talking about greenhouse effect. So you look at what are the factors, and in fact, in Malaysia, the PM, Persatuan Architect Malaysia, PEM, and ASA, okay, the Malaysian authority governing bodies in terms of building design and architecture, have come up with a rating system, which we call a Green Building Index. It's a rating system for evaluating the environment design and performance of Malaysian buildings. So that means you can say, oh, this building is a green building, or it's not a green building, it's intelligent building or not intelligent building, based on this criteria, which is actually, they're talking about number one, energy efficiency, indoor quality, for environmental quality, sustainable planning, how you plan your infrastructure, material use, okay, reusable material, water efficiency, and also what we call this innovation. So there's a lot of factors being incorporated when you design a building. So this actually is something that we are what we call this practicing now for new buildings, but the old ones we have to do retrofitting. Okay. But if you look in like countries in UK, for instance, this becomes like a norm. Sometimes they use recycled material for their building. Okay, that's also contributing to the Green Building Index. Now, going into practice, okay, just now we're talking about structures. Now, if in terms of how we want to achieve this, how do we move forward? How do we work on it? Now, in organizations, in companies, that in universities, in communities, we need to have a concerted effort by the organizing committee, by the stakeholders, by the directors, by people who are being entrusted to actually implement and carry out what we call this the energy practice and sustainability measures. They have to have a template. Okay, for instance, like in any organization, you need to have a policy, a committee, accounting center, index. You have to determine the best baseline. What kind of achievement that you want to achieve? Do you want to save 10% savings, 20% savings? What kind of energy saving criteria that you want to achieve? Okay, the procedures. Do you open your, or what time do you close and open your air conditioning system? So do you have to make sure that where you have a building cooling system, and then you have to have an audit. Audit is very, very important because it will tell you where are the leakages on energy, where are the inefficiencies, where are the wastages, so that you can actually plug and play or retrofit your system with a proper measure for you to do basically a more efficient energy savings measures in your organization. And of course, and you will also do contracting works, okay, to do all these measures, and continuous energy saving measures in terms of what else do we need to do for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It has to be a continuous process. So when you look at basically the evolution of energy savings in organizations, usually when you want to actually go into energy saving mode, you want to actually maintain sustainability, you need to audit your organization. Where are you now? How much saving have you made? How much wastages? You wouldn't know this until you do that audit. You do inventory check of all your building, all your parts, and all your what we call this asset that's related to energy, what we call this energy management. And then from there, you determine the baseline. What is the minimum baseline? What kind of savings do you want to establish? Okay, for instance, in university, like in UIA, for instance, we have 40 cents per kilowatt hour average baseline for the last 4 years. Okay, we want to reduce it to 33 cents. What should we do? So we have to know how much, because you're talking about a very big savings. I give you an example. If you talk about a 40%, 40 cent per kilowatt hour, okay, billing that you have to pay every month, if you can save it, if you can reduce to 33 cents per kilowatt hour rate for usage, say like in UIA, for instance, for the next 21 years, you are talking about a saving of 140 million ringgit just on saving by changing the rates of the tariff. So you're talking about how much money can you save and how much things you can achieve. And right now, especially when you talk about, you know, government cutting down expenditure, university budgets being shrinked and all that, all the more reason for you to be more important, all the more reason for you to be able to be more sensitive and take this thing more seriously as part of your initiative to be able to do more savings for the university, because you can actually generate income, or you can create more areas for research and whatnot with the excess money that you save. And of course, you will do retrofitting exercise. You can do energy saving alternatives later on. You know, sometimes you find alternative measures, like I mentioned just now, okay, by having like biomass or solar energy, whatnot, which we have done already in a very, very small scale, okay. And of course, continuously developing energy alternatives, because you're talking about as we go along, students will increase, okay. You have more intakes, you have more campus to manage. So the bill will definitely go up. As much as saving you try to implement for this first 5 years, the next 5 years, you will have more costs incurred. So you still have to do these energy measures. So it's a proactive activity that you have to do from time to time. Okay, having said that, I would like to share with you one case study on environmental sustainability in the telecommunication sector. Okay, this time because this is something that I've been doing outside during my last 15 years in experience, because I was doing a lot of telecommunication infrastructure project. And of course, I'm doing sustainability. Now, just to give an example, the phone that you use, okay, you're talking about your Samsung or your Apple, okay. Now you're talking about 5G. Now 5G is very, very important. If you don't have any 5G at your home, if you don't have a Wi-Fi, you feel like it's as good as you have no electricity or water, because it's a fourth utility. Telecommunication is very, very important. But do you know that basically, in order for you to run the telecommunication infrastructure, a lot of energy is being used. Energy itself, the electricity is 33% of the operational cost for all the telecom infrastructure towers. And for the infrastructure, not all of the towers are basically within the city where you have telecom grids, TNB grid, power grid. Some of them are basically outside the reaches of the city. So you need to have generator set, diesel set, and you sometimes have to use around 4,000, what we call this 4,000 liter diesel per annum for you to be able to have an alternative backup supply for the towers. And the emission of the carbon also is as significant as well. So therefore, we need to find a cleaner alternative for you to be able to have this thing to be operated while we have good coverage, but we need to have a cleaner alternative. So one way to do it is to have a solar option as a backup to the what we call this the generator supply and also to the power supply. So when we have this, then we will have a better, cleaner way for you to manage the overall infrastructure in the future. Now, in Malaysia itself, especially in areas where you have basically, they call it high attenuation rate. Now, one of the measures of solar, okay, how the city or exposure of the sunlight, it is actually a very important factor for you to be able to determine where you want to put your solar panel. Now, if you go and put your solar panel at the place which is actually the rain downpour is very high, it is not efficient. It's not the most economical way to do it. So you look at some cities in Malaysia, for instance, like Kota Kinabalu, in Bayan Lepas, Georgetown. These are some of the areas which has very high attenuation rate, meaning that the exposure of sunlight per meter square is the highest in Malaysia. So this is the most effective area to implement solar project. But doesn't mean that other place is not effective as well. It is effective, but you have to plan it accordingly. So for telecom towers, we have identified areas that you can use a hybrid combination of what we call this power grid and also solar for them to be able to become more sustainable in terms of long-term operational usage. And of course, there's also what we call a wind turbine, okay, for telecom towers, okay, for 24/7 clean energy. But again, this one also depends on locations, because some places have like in Kota Kinabalu or basically in the East Malaysia, where the wind speed is around 15 miles per hour, it makes more economical sense, okay, than other places. So it depends on the location itself. Now, the last one is actually what I want to cover is sustainability measures in IIUM itself, in IIUM campus. Now, from 2022, for the last 10 years, we have been finding ways and means to try to save the cost of energy in IIUM. And this is not something that we just happen to stumble by accident. We have a lot of discussions with other universities. In fact, as a matter of fact, we should be thankful to UTM because they have been generous enough to give us their template and their master plan, FOC, to be able to do these energy measures. So we work with them to come up with a master plan to save energy, and we have done quite a bit of work in terms of retrofitting, energy savings, solar, but these are all done in spurts. It is not basically a holistic master plan. But Alhamdulillah, we have done this, and we have basically did achieve some savings in our billing, in university's billing. But like I said just now, we have to move forward. We have to look at alternative measures. We have to actually continuously find ways to actually save energy, and of course generate new energy for export. So in any circumstances, not just in UIA or anywhere where you have unused reserve land, it provides opportunity to generate what we call this energy source that will reduce dependency on high tariff imposed by current service provider. Okay, how do we do that? With an independent power generation via small renewable biomass energy plant, the university can benefit the community by having more learning opportunities. We can generate more alternative energy, which is actually cheaper than the conventional energy power grid, that's for sure, because of the tariff. Because tariff for biomass is cheaper. Okay, it provides cheaper alternative. Transfer technology, and of course, we'll call this new income stream. So when you look at basically where we are in terms of the milestone on the university itself, we have done solar panels, we have done basically car parks, solar car parks, we have done energy policy. We have achieved 5 to 10% savings via policy implementation. We have done what we call this energy retrofitting. We changed the LED lights, we changed the wiring, we have changed basically some of the sensors in the air conditioning system, because air conditioning itself contributes 60% of the total usage of the building in university and also most commercial buildings. So we have done quite a lot of savings. But of course, like I said just now, we need to continuously save energy, and we have to look at alternative solutions. Now, from 2015 to 2020, we have managed to do a saving of 6.5 million to 7.5 million based on from lighting upgrades that we've done, optimization, maximum demand, and power optimization. These are basically things that I have done during my time at IIUM. We have done quite a lot of work in terms of energy savings, and Alhamdulillah, I'm very proud to say that we have contributed quite a lot in terms of our savings, and we feel that there's a lot more that we can do in the future, inshallah. And of course, we have done a lot of initiatives with all the solar panels, energies, and hopefully we will continue more in the future in order for us to create sustainability in our environment and in our community. So, in conclusion, although 1400 years ago has elapsed, 1400 years has elapsed, the message by the Prophet Muhammad SAW about environmental sustainability remains the same. It has been and has always been until the Day of Judgment. The creation of inviolable zones show the importance placed by the Prophet Muhammad SAW on sustainable use of resources and protection of all the land and wildlife. He also gave a high degree of importance towards sustainable cultivation of land, we'll call this waste minimization, preservation of resources, and also protection of wildlife. And finally, as practicing Muslims, we have to take measures to practice environmental sustainability, and it begins with our individual mindset and values, which will then be translated in our actions in our community and organizations. With that, I would like to end my talk with a hadith, which says, "The world is beautiful and verdant, and verily God, be He exalted, has made you His stewards in it, and He sees you how to equip yourself." Riwayat Muslim. So with that, I would like to end my talk with thank you very much. Jazakumullah khairan kathira. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alaikum salam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Zahid, for all your sharing of knowledge, experience, and views on Islam and environmental sustainability. We hope this talk has benefited everyone who is with us today. To all joiners, we welcome your feedback for the improvement of our Baseerah Talk Series. Kindly refer to our chat box where we share a link to our evaluation form. We would really appreciate every single feedback from all of you. Now, I would like to open the floor for a question and answer session for Zoom participants. Please get ready. If you have any question, you may unmute your mic and ask our speaker directly. As for joiners via YouTube, you may drop your questions at the chat box and we'll read it out. So if anybody has any question, you may unmute your mic, introduce yourself, and proceed with your question. If there's not any yet, then I'll be reading the questions that we received on YouTube. First one is from Brother Muhammad Arif Zahran. How do we reconcile sustainability with the current development trajectory of Malaysia to better align with Islam and environmental sustainability?
Can you repeat the question again?
How do we reconcile sustainability with the current development trajectory of Malaysia to better align with Islam and environmental sustainability?
Okay, when you look at the sustainable practice that we have in Malaysia, I think most important is actually the most important thing is you have to practice what you preach. Okay, you practice what you preach. We have basically have a lot of plans to do sustainability in Malaysia. We have organizations, we have basically initiative. We have what call this the SEDA, okay, the Solar Economic Development Authority, Sustainable Energy Development Authority, which has been entrusted to plan with the government to do a lot of energy savings initiatives. Okay, we have seen a lot of improvement for the last many years. We are talking about what we call this energy saving measures. Most universities have are being given allocation of what we call this tariff to do LSS solar projects. Okay, there are a lot of initiative by SEDA to do all these energy saving measures. Okay, my concern is only one thing. It is the effort is, while it is good, it is not commensurate with the volume that we have. Okay, now we're talking about, say, like a population of 30 million. Okay, 30 million people. We have organizations, companies. Okay, but we need to have more support from the government in terms of providing more leeways in terms of what we call this support structure. Okay, that is basically lacking. Just now when we talk about initiative of sustainability, I mentioned just now in terms of the infrastructure, especially like you want to do EV. Okay, yes, we are doing. You can see petrol stations and all that, but mostly we are talking about what we call this initiative that is not. It is based on what we call this voluntary in terms of it's a commercial effort. Okay, you make money from charging of stations. You're talking about you charge maybe $1, like BMW, they charge maybe $4 per kilowatt per minute. Other cars maybe $1.20. Different charges, different rates for all these areas. But there is no what we call this acta or act that that the government put with all the municipal councils. They say if they have said that you mewajibkan setiap bangunan you must have a charging station, you must have basically it becomes basically you incorporate this in the bylaw. For instance, like okay, if I want to build a house, okay, or I want to build a building, if I don't put basically a charging station, then I will not get approval. If you do that as a bylaw, then it becomes much more stronger. Then the infrastructure will be more, we will have more what we call this significant changes in terms of improving the sustainability in our practice. So that means you're talking about enforcement, you're talking about policy. It has to be rock solid. If it's just basically not it's not a compulsion. If it's just optional, also yeah, if I can do, if I don't do it, so fine. There's no consequences to it, so it won't be successful. So we need to look at that at the policy level. So that's where I think government is very, very important in terms of putting this as part of their initiative, in their measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. There's this one continuation from the previous question. Should environmental sustainability awareness be made available as part of religious studies in schools to nurture next generation?
What can you repeat again the question?
Right, sure. The question is, should environmental sustainability awareness be made available as part of religious studies in schools to nurture next generation?
Oh yes, I think I strongly believe in that, because Islam is a way of life. Islam basically is not just, you're talking about not just basically doing the rituals. It's not just how you wear, how you look like, how you talk, but it's how you practice. That's what people look at. Because especially in terms of how we say we want to do da'wah to non-Muslims, we want to actually impress upon ourselves, not just individual, but as an ummah of a country. You look at basically at how you behave yourself. If you're talking about you want to talk about Islam, but you are sloppy, your outlook is not so clean, you don't practice cleanliness, how can people be attracted to you as a Muslim? But if you practice what you preach, for instance, you have cleanliness. One community I'm so impressed is the Japanese. If you look at Japanese during the 2018 World Cup, you know what they do? After every game, they will collect the rubbish at the stadium. Nobody asked them to do it, but they collect. What does that tell you? That they have more Muslim values than Muslim themselves, because they are doing that. So you're talking about the value inside them says that you have to have that kind of study. Even in Japan also, if you look at the primary school student, when they're 7 years old, they wash their own toilet. That means they at the schools, during recess, the kids will clean up the toilet. There's no janitor, nothing, and the place is very clean. That is Muslim value. So if you're talking about environmental studies, it has to begin during at the infancy stage, at the prasekolah, tadika level, even in the preschool. It's part of the Islamic culture. So that means the religion has to be it has to be taught holistically, not just basically on the ritualistic part of it, but also the practical part of it. Rasulullah SAW have already shown us that, okay, in terms of how he has already done, the zoning. Imagine, I'm so impressed with when I look at it, I say, wow, what I'm doing now is nothing new compared to what he has done. So with his limited resources during that time, he has taught a lot of things. Because he has an Islamic mind, he thinks everything from the Islamic point of view. So it just happened to be that, this is actually part of our obligation to take care of the environment, to take care of the nature. So obviously it becomes part of the teachings of Islam. So when we put into environmental studies, it is definitely part of our curriculum, whether we like it or not, it is part of it, but it just have to be put in black and white. So that's something that even the educationist needs to incorporate and put in their curriculum in the future for the betterment of the people. Because like I say, you can do all sorts of rules, you can do all sorts of projects, but if the mindset is still third world and you don't have that Islamic mindset, then it will not fly. So these are the things that we have to put in practice at a very young age. Yes.
All right, thank you, Dr. Zahid, for the explanation. We do have another one question, but before that, I would like to again open the floor to our Zoom participants. If any of you have any question, you may turn on the microphone and also your camera.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.
I'm not going to open my camera because I'm not in the position to show my face right now. But I do have one question regarding the publicization of sustainability goals, right? So oftentimes, whenever we hear about green efforts, about sustainability, it's usually publicly. I say publicly because I feel like the West just does a better job at putting up that front for sustainability, and it's why they seem to be the pioneers in sustainability. And I wanted to ask, how do we bridge the inferiority between cultural groups, such as secular groups in the West and religious groups like Islam in the East, to recognize that these issues affect everyone and are not solely caused or associated to a specific demographic?
Okay. Good question. Very good question. How do we differentiate, or how do we bridge the gap and say that this is not basically a Western issue or Eastern issue or a non-religious issue in terms of sustainability? Now, I think going back to the first point that you mentioned just now, yes, in fact, the Western countries have done an excellent job in actually providing sustainability. And in fact, I'm really amazed, you're talking about, if you look at some of these people like the Greenpeace movement, you're talking about marine biologists, they go to the deep waters trying to actually, try to find ways to overcome pollution, try to save the wildlife, these are actually very Muslim values. I mean, to me, this is something that we have to respect because they are what we call this in Malay, they call it prihatin. We are very, very, very what we call this sensitive to the needs of the environment. So these are the things that actually, if you look at us, we are Muslims. We should be more sensitive to the environment than they are by right. But sadly to say that they see this more than us. But we have to take that as they have that Islamic value in that sense, in terms of the awareness, the responsibility towards the nature of the environment. So these are something that we do. Now, we can attribute this to maybe education level, exposure, maybe in the Muslim countries. Okay, sometimes, when I visited Muslim countries, you see that, wow, you feel like inferior because, why we are not as good as them and we are Muslim, we should be better than them and all that. I believe that is not nothing, it has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with education level, exposure. It has to do with basically our culture. Sometimes, we are, sometimes Asians, we are shy. we are not proactive. Okay, sometimes we don't take ownership. Sometimes we depend on people to decide for us. So it is like being colonialized in the sense that, okay, what they do, we follow. We don't have that ownership in terms of, I do it because Islam asked me to do it, and it's basically something that is being ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and of course the Prophet have shown the way. So this kind of mindset, if you look at in the times of the Ottoman Empire, or basically before that, during the Abbasiyah, during the Middle Ages, we are at the forefront. They are following us. If you look at the seerah of the Muslims, we are the one who excel in science. We are the one who excel in philosophy. We are the one who excel in what we call this research, in all the mathematics. Now, who's following who now? So basically, when you look at that, our mindset, we have been ingrained with the fact that, oh, we are not as good. That's wrong. We are better than them. But it is basically ingrained upon us that we are inferior. It's not true. We are better, but we have to actually educate ourselves first, and also we have to actually have this mindset change, which is I told you just now in my presentation. The mindset is the most important mindset change. We are Muslims. We are basically ummatan wasatan. We are basically the enlightened people in terms of, we got the Quran, we got the Sunnah, we have everything in front of us, but we do not how we cannot translate between the text and the theory into practice. So that's where we have to bridge the gap. The gap is actually that practice part of it. But whatever you see in the West, okay, these are basically something that, alhamdulillah, God gave them the wisdom. They give them basically the knowledge. And this knowledge is actually from Allah. It's not from them. Okay, it's basically something that they look for it. Allah will give them. Like for us, if we look for basically knowledge, we will be given the same thing as well. But these are basically something that we have to be clear. Going back to the original tenets of Islam, I think we have to look at Islam as the way of life. It has everything. Okay, it has, you know, the politics, the economics, the environmental, everything ordained inside the Quran. So it's just for us to be able to find it, to look into ourselves and how we can actually become a better person based on whatever is in front of us. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Doctor. And also thank you to our participant, Ms. Alyssa, for the question. We have one more here, Doctor. A big reason as to why so many people are reluctant to implement greener practices is because people prioritize convenience. This is evident from Malaysia's efforts to curb plastic bag usage by charging 20 cents per bag, where many businesses actually made a profit out of the effort. And I've met some stores which actually charge until to the extent to 1 ringgit. And so the question is, how do we make greener practices convenient? And if not, how do we convince people that the cumulative effort of being green is more valuable than personal convenience?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because sometimes when you look at barriers of entry to be able to accept what we call this sustainable initiative, it's not something that has always been automatic in our mind. Okay. For instance, like, you know, I give an example, plastic bag. Plastic bag, when you look at basically, there are two types of plastic bag. One, the conventional plastic bag, and the other one is the biodegradable plastic bag. Okay, the plastic bag, the conventional plastic bag, if you actually, if you throw away the plastic bag, it will not be decomposed because it's not biodegradable. 50 years, 100 years down the line, it will still be in plastic form. So basically, it will not be decomposed. But if you buy a biodegradable plastic bag, it will decompose itself because it is basically, you know, made of organic material. But the problem is the manufacturing cost of this biodegradable bag is more expensive than the plastic bag. So you're talking about economics of cost. Okay, so basically there is an issue in terms of cost. But if you feel that the cost of sustainability is more important, you will be able to overcome this barrier in terms of cost and actually put initiative in any part of your practice, like in your life, whatever it is. Okay, number one. Number two, just now when you talk about the barrier of entry, people are not really, into green and whatnot. I think again, it's more of habit. It's a habit because, like for instance, you go to a restaurant, you see people when after they eat, they just leave their food or they just leave their what we call this, their plate, and they don't actually carry the plate and throw it at the waste basket. Like if you go to some other countries, it becomes automatic. Now it is basically a habit. To me, most of these sustainable problems are basically based on human behavior. Human behavior means habitual in terms of best practices is not being adopted. And of course, the other thing is the reward factor. Okay, sometimes we have what we call this incentives. Okay, for instance, like if the community have incentive programs, to provide, say like, okay, if you can eliminate what we call this certain amount of wastage, then you'll be given some credit points or some kind of vouchers, whatever. Maybe if you do this kind of competition within community level or incentives, maybe it can create interest and it create motivation. If you actually, like, if you clean up the mess at your place, and then you actually submit to municipal council how many tons of rubbish that you collected, and you get merit points, that can also be a reward factor. So you have to do this in what we call this reward scheme model, so that when you actually have what we call this something that can motivate you in the future, then the community will then slowly adopt this kind of what we call this. They will buy into this sustainability or environmental sustainability awareness, and what we call this. Maybe they can improve the overall quality of sustainable environment.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Any other questions from our Zoom participants? All right, if there's none, then I would like to really thank you so much, Dr. Zahid, and everyone who has participated. Inshallah, I've come to the end of our program today. On behalf of IIUM Academy, I would like to express our appreciation to Dr. Zahid for your precious time and willingness to be our speaker today. May Allah bless all efforts in spreading knowledge, and may He make things easy for you in your future initiatives. And thank you to all joiners for our support. We apologize for any shortcoming in handling this program. Inshallah, we'll meet again in the upcoming Baseerah Talk Series. Stay tuned with us as we'll announce another renowned speaker next month. And for those of you who haven't filled up the evaluation form, please do so. That will really help us in giving your evaluations for our next program. The post and details will be up on our social media platforms for the next Baseerah Talk Series. So do follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and also LinkedIn. As for today's live session, it will be up on our official YouTube channel for your future reference. So make sure to click subscribe at IIUM Academy right now, and also hit the notification bell to not miss any new content. We look forward to seeing you again, inshallah. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum.